What would you risk for love? Would you cross oceans? Defy traditions? Challenge the most powerful forces in society? And what if that love, pure, genuine, and real, became the very thing that sealed your fate? Tonight, we're taking you into the heart of Dubai, where glittering towers hide shadows darker than the desert night. This is the story of Aisha Malhotra, a 22-year-old woman who dared to dream beyond her circumstances, who found connection in the most unlikely place, and who paid the ultimate price for a love that was never meant to exist. Have you ever felt trapped by circumstances beyond your control? Have you watched someone you care about chase a dream that seemed too dangerous, too impossible? Do you know what it's like to love someone the world says you shouldn't? Then this story will haunt you. Because what happened to Aisha isn't just about forbidden romance, it's about power, exploitation, and the invisible chains that bind millions of migrant workers across the globe. It's about the price of silence and the cost of speaking truth to power. But here's the thing, stories like Aisha's are buried every single day. Swept under expensive carpets in luxury penthouses. Silenced by money, influence, and fear. And if we don't shine a light on these tragedies, if we don't demand justice for the voiceless, then we become complicit in their erasure. So if you believe these stories matter, if you think Aisha's life deserves to be remembered, then I need you to do something right now. Hit that subscribe button. Not for me, but for every Aisha out there whose story might never be told. Because every subscription sends a message that we're paying attention, that we refuse to look away. Let me ask you something honest, why wouldn't you subscribe to content that exposes truth and fights for justice? Drop your answer in the comments, I genuinely want to know. Now, let's go back to where it all began. Aisha Malhotra grew up in a small village outside Jodhpur, Rajasthan, where the sun scorched the earth and opportunities were as scarce as rain. Her childhood home was modest, cracked walls, a tin roof that rattled during storms, and a single room where her entire family slept on thin mattresses. Her father had been a laborer, strong and proud, until an accident at a construction site left him bedridden with chronic pain. Medical bills piled up. Debts grew. Her mother took on washing clothes for wealthier families, but it was never enough. Aisha's younger siblings needed school supplies, food, medicine. The weight of survival pressed down on everyone. At 22, Aisha was educated enough to read and write, but in her village, that meant little for a young woman with no dowry and no connections. Marriage proposals came from men twice her age, farmers looking for free labor disguised as wives. Her mother would cry at night, torn between desperation and the desire to protect her daughter from a loveless future. Then came the recruitment agency. A man in a crisp suit arrived in the village square one afternoon, promising jobs in the Gulf. Good wages. Safe working conditions. Respectable families. He painted Dubai as a land of endless possibility, where even a village girl could send enough money home to transform her family's fate. The elders warned against it. Girls who go there come back broken, one grandmother muttered. Or they don't come back at all. But Aisha's mother saw hope where others saw danger. The promised salary was more than her father had earned in a year. It could pay off debts, fund her brother's education, maybe even buy medicine that actually worked. Aisha signed the contract with trembling hands. 3 weeks later, she boarded a plane for the first time in her life. The roar of engines terrified her. She clutched a small photograph of her family, whispering prayers her grandmother had taught her. Dubai hit her like a physical force, the heat, the glass towers stretching into impossible heights, the cars that cost more than her entire village. She was shuttled to a villa in Al Bursha, where her employer, Mrs. Khalifa, waited with cold eyes and a long list of rules. Wake at 5 a.m. Prepare breakfast. Clean every room. Wash clothes by hand. Serve meals. No phone calls during work hours. No leaving the house without permission. No speaking unless spoken to. The work was exhausting, but Aisha endured. She sent money home every month, and her mother's tearful voice on the phone, thanking her, blessing her, made every aching muscle worth it. She kept her head down, stayed invisible, and tried not to dream beyond survival. But fate had other plans. And before we continue, I want you to think about something. How many people do you know who've sacrificed everything for their families? Who've left home, endured mistreatment, swallowed their pride, all for the people they love? If that resonates with you, if you've ever felt that kind of pressure or witnessed that kind of sacrifice, then smash that like button right now. Let's honor every person who's ever had to choose between their own happiness and their family's survival. Sheikh Rashid Al-Qasimi belonged to a different universe entirely. Born into one of Dubai's royal families, his life was a carefully choreographed performance. Business meetings with international investors. Charity galas where photographers captured his every smile. Board meetings for companies he barely understood but technically owned. His days were filled with people who agreed with everything he said and laughed at jokes that weren't funny. Wealth surrounded him, but connection eluded him. His family had arranged his future before he could walk, the right schools, the right friends, the right marriage prospects. Tradition dictated every choice. Duty crushed every desire. He was expected to be a symbol, not a person. A brand, not a human being. At 35, Rashid had mastered the art of wearing masks. The philanthropist. The businessman. The devoted son. But beneath the designer suits and polished speeches lived a man suffocating under the weight of expectations he never chose. His family was planning his marriage to a cousin, a strategic alliance between branches of the family tree. Love was irrelevant. Compatibility was unnecessary. Only bloodline and business mattered. The charity event that changed everything was supposed to be routine. Another ribbon cutting, another speech, another photo opportunity. His company had organized a fundraiser for migrant worker welfare, ironic, given how many workers his family's businesses employed under questionable conditions. Rashid moved through the crowd mechanically, shaking hands, accepting praise, counting the minutes until he could leave. Then he saw her. Aisha was serving refreshments, moving quietly between guests with downcast eyes. Most people didn't even acknowledge her existence. She was part of the scenery, invisible labor that kept the event running smoothly. But when Rashid reached for a glass of juice, their eyes met for just a moment. There was no calculation in her gaze. No agenda. No rehearsed deference. Just a brief, genuine moment of human recognition before she looked away, embarrassed. It shouldn't have mattered. He met hundreds of people every week. But something about that unguarded instant stayed with him long after the event ended. He found himself thinking about her eyes, tired but kind. Wary but hopeful. Rashid made inquiries. Discreet ones. He learned her name, where she worked, her story. He told himself he was just curious, just concerned about worker welfare. But the truth was simpler and more dangerous. In a life filled with people who wanted something from him, he'd glimpsed someone who wanted nothing at all. And that made her the most dangerous person he'd ever met. Their first real conversation happened by accident, or perhaps by design disguised as accident. Rashid arranged a random inspection of households employing workers through his company's recruitment program. When he arrived at Mrs. Khalifa's villa, Aisha was cleaning the courtyard. He asked her questions about her working conditions. She answered carefully, aware that honesty could cost her job. But he pressed gently, and gradually, her guard lowered. She spoke about her village, her family, her dreams of someday opening a small school for girls back home. Simple dreams that would never require wealth, only opportunity. Rashid listened in a way no one had listened to him in years, without flattery, without agenda, just honest exchange. He left her his private number. "If you ever need help," he said. Anything at all. She should have thrown it away. Should have recognized the danger. But loneliness makes us all reckless. The first text she sent was simple: "Thank you for your kindness." His response came within minutes: "Thank you for your honesty." What began as occasional messages evolved into daily conversations. He shared frustrations about family pressure and the emptiness of his public life. She shared fears about her father's worsening health and her guilt over being so far from home. They met in secret, coffee shops in distant neighborhoods where no one knew his face, quiet parks at dawn before the city woke. He wore ordinary clothes, sunglasses, a baseball cap. For brief stolen hours, he wasn't Sheikh Rashid. He was just Rashid. Just a man. And she wasn't a maid. She was just Aisha. Just a woman. He made promises. "I'll find a way," he swore. "I'll protect you. We'll figure this out." She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But reality has a way of crushing beautiful lies. Mrs. Khalifa's driver noticed Aisha's occasional absences. Other household staff whispered about the glow in her cheeks, the way she smiled at her phone. In a world where servants were expected to be invisible, happiness made you visible. Rumors spread like wildfire through the network of domestic workers, drivers, and security personnel that formed Dubai's invisible infrastructure. And rumors, once started, always reached the wrong ears. Someone, perhaps a jealous staff member, perhaps a loyalist to the family, reported the affair to Rashid's relatives. The response was swift and brutal. Now, before we go further into what happened next, I need to pause and ask you something real. Are you actually invested in what happens to Aisha and Rashid? Because if you are, if this story is gripping you, then prove it. Hit that like button. Share this video. Comment below with one word that describes how you're feeling right now. Because engagement isn't just about algorithms, it's about showing that these stories matter, that real people's lives matter. And if you can't even click a button for Aisha's memory, then ask yourself, what does that say about us? The family meeting was held in Rashid's uncle's mansion, a fortress of marble and gold where decisions about bloodlines and business were made behind closed doors. Rashid was summoned without explanation. When he arrived, 12 family members sat in a semicircle like a tribunal. His father. His uncles. His older brother. All wearing expressions of barely contained fury. "We know about the girl," his uncle said flatly. Rashid's blood turned to ice. They laid out the evidence. Photographs from surveillance cameras. Testimony from staff. Phone records. They'd been watching him for weeks. "This ends now," his father commanded. "Today." Rashid tried to defend himself, to explain that Aisha was different, that what they shared was real. But his words were drowned out by accusations of dishonor, recklessness, and betrayal of family values. "She's a servant," his brother spat. "A nobody from nowhere. You think you can parade her around as part of this family? You think the media won't destroy us? That business partners won't question our judgment? She's a human being," Rashid shot back. "She deserves respect. She deserves whatever we decide she deserves," his uncle interrupted coldly. "And you will end this, or we will end it for you." The threat hung in the air, unambiguous. They gave him 24 hours to cut all contact. They confiscated his personal phone. Assigned him a security detail that was really surveillance. Made it clear that defiance would have consequences, not just for him, but for Aisha. Rashid was trapped. He'd lived his entire life in a golden cage, but he'd never felt the bars so acutely. He tried to warn Aisha. Sent a message through a trusted friend: "Stay away. It's not safe. I'm sorry." But the message never reached her. Because by then, other wheels were already in motion. Aisha noticed the change immediately. Rashid stopped responding to messages. Their planned meeting never happened. Days passed with only silence. She told herself he was busy. That family obligations had pulled him away temporarily. But deep down, she knew. She'd always known this was how it would end. Mrs. Khalifa's treatment grew harsher. More criticism. More impossible tasks. The other staff stopped speaking to her, afraid of guilt by association. One evening, Aisha overheard a phone conversation. Mrs. Khalifa speaking in hushed, urgent Arabic. Aisha's language skills were limited, but she caught enough words: problem. Girl. Handled. Terror seized her. She thought about running, but where? She had no money, no passport. Mrs. Khalifa kept it locked away, as many employers did. She was trapped in a foreign country with no protection and no allies. She tried calling Rashid one last time. The number was disconnected. That night, she prayed harder than she ever had in her life. Prayed for protection. For escape. For a miracle. But miracles are rare in stories like this. 3 days after Rashid's family confronted him, Aisha was given unexpected permission to leave the house. Mrs. Khalifa handed her cash and a list. Go to the market. Get these items. Be back in 2 hours. It was unusual. Aisha rarely left the villa, but she didn't question it. Maybe this was a sign things were returning to normal. Maybe the storm had passed. She took the bus to the market district, bought the items quickly, and started the walk back as the sun set over the city. The streets grew quieter. Fewer people. Longer shadows. She didn't notice the car following her. Didn't see the 3 men until they surrounded her in an alley shortcut she'd taken dozens of times before. No words were exchanged. No demands for money or valuables. This wasn't a robbery. It was an execution. Witnesses later reported hearing screams, but no one intervened. In a city where minding your own business was survival, people looked away. By the time someone finally called the police, it was too late. Aisha Malhotra was found in that alley at 9:47 p.m., her life stolen, her dreams shattered, her family's hopes destroyed. She was 22 years old. The police arrived. Photographs were taken. Evidence was collected, or rather, evidence was carefully ignored. Because within hours, phone calls were made from very high places to very important people. Stories were aligned. Reports were edited. Witnesses suddenly remembered nothing useful. The official statement was brief: robbery gone wrong. Investigation ongoing. But there would be no investigation. No arrests. No justice. Just another dead migrant worker. Another tragedy buried beneath bureaucracy and influence. Another family in India receiving devastating news through a crackling phone line. And if this makes you angry, if you feel even a fraction of the injustice that Aisha's family felt, then don't just sit there. Subscribe to this channel. Share this video. Make noise. Because silence is exactly what powerful people count on. They bet on our apathy, our short attention spans, our willingness to watch tragedy and then scroll to the next video without doing anything. Prove them wrong. Show them that Aisha's story won't be forgotten. That we're watching. That we demand better. The official police report was a masterpiece of calculated vagueness. Victim, Aisha Malhotra, 22, Indian national. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. Suspected motive, robbery. Personal belongings missing. No witnesses. Case remains open. But everyone involved knew the truth. The forensic examiner who noted inconsistencies in the wounds. The detective who received a phone call from his superior telling him to close the case. The journalist who started asking questions and was suddenly reassigned to covering traffic updates. The system worked exactly as designed, protecting power, silencing truth, erasing inconvenient victims. Aisha's employer, Mrs. Khalifa, expressed deep sadness in a brief statement before refusing further comment. She hired a new maid within a week. In India, Aisha's mother collapsed when she received the news. Her father, already weak, suffered a stroke from the shock. Her siblings were pulled out of school to work, the dreams Aisha had died for evaporating like morning dew. 2 weeks after Aisha's death, an anonymous wire transfer arrived in her family's bank account. $50,000. No name attached. No explanation. Blood money. Her mother wanted to refuse it. Wanted to scream at the injustice. But they were drowning in debt, and the money could save her husband's life. So she took it, and hated herself for taking it, and cried until there were no tears left. Back in Dubai, the migrant worker community whispered Aisha's name like a prayer and a warning. Her story spread through labor camps and servant quarters, a reminder of how little their lives mattered in the machinery of wealth and power. Some activists tried to raise awareness. NGOs called for investigations. But their voices were drowned out by the roar of business as usual. Dubai's reputation remained pristine. Tourism continued. Investments poured in. The city's marketing campaigns showed only gleaming towers and luxury lifestyles, never the invisible workforce that made it all possible. As for Sheikh Rashid, he became a ghost. He stopped attending public events. His philanthropic work ceased. Business partners noted his absence from meetings. Family members whispered about his deteriorating mental state. Those closest to him said he barely ate, barely slept. That he stared at his phone for hours, scrolling through deleted messages he'd memorized. That he woke screaming from nightmares. His family arranged the marriage they'd planned. He went through the ceremony like a man already dead, saying vows with empty eyes. Some say guilt consumed him. Others say he was simply broken by the realization that all his wealth and power couldn't protect one person who mattered. He never spoke Aisha's name again. But those who knew him said he carried her photograph hidden in his wallet, a secret memorial to a love that cost everything and changed nothing. The world moved on. It always does. But some stories refuse to stay buried. Aisha Malhotra's story isn't unique. It's not even rare. Right now, across the Gulf states, across Asia, across the world, millions of migrant workers live in the shadows of gleaming cities. They clean the houses, raise the children, build the towers, and serve the meals that make modern luxury possible. And when they suffer, when they're abused, when they disappear, the world looks away. Because it's easier to admire the skyline than to think about who built it. Easier to enjoy luxury than to question who serves it. Easier to scroll past tragedy than to demand accountability. But here's what Aisha's story should teach us. Every person matters. Not because of their wealth, their status, or their family name. But because they're human. Because they have dreams and fears and people who love them. Because their lives have value that can't be measured in currency or social standing. Power without accountability is tyranny. When the wealthy and connected can commit crimes without consequence, when systems exist to protect perpetrators instead of victims, we don't have justice, we have organized oppression. Silence is complicity. Every time we ignore these stories, every time we accept the official narrative without question, every time we prioritize our comfort over someone else's suffering, we become part of the problem. Aisha wanted to help her family. She wanted to build a school for girls. She wanted to matter. And she did matter. Her life mattered. Her dreams mattered. Her death matters. So what are we going to do about it? We can start by refusing to forget. By sharing stories that make powerful people uncomfortable. By supporting organizations that protect migrant workers. By demanding transparency and accountability from governments and corporations that profit from vulnerable labor. We can start by acknowledging that the same systems that failed Aisha are failing people right now, today, in cities across the world. And we can start by making a simple choice, to care. To pay attention. To not look away. Now I'm going to be direct with you one final time. If you watched this entire video but you're not going to subscribe, not going to like, not going to share, then I want you to comment below and tell me why. Tell me why Aisha's story doesn't deserve 30 seconds of your time. Tell me why convenience matters more than justice. Tell me why you're okay with being a passive observer while these tragedies continue. Because here's the truth, this channel exists to tell the stories that others won't tell. To shine light in places that powerful people want to keep dark. To give voice to the voiceless and memory to the forgotten. And if that doesn't matter to you, if you can watch Aisha's story and feel nothing, do nothing, then maybe you should ask yourself what that says about the world we're building together. But if it does matter, if you believe that every life has value and every death deserves truth, if you think we owe it to people like Aisha to refuse silence and demand better, then subscribe, like, share, comment, engage. Not for me. Not for the algorithm. But for every Aisha out there whose story might be the next one we tell. Because the only thing more tragic than her death would be her being forgotten. Rest in peace, Aisha Malhotra. Your story has been told. Your life has been honored. Your memory will not fade. And to everyone watching, what will you do with the truth you now carry? The answer to that question matters more than you know. This has been Whispered Crimes. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay compassionate, and never stop asking questions.